All right, it's 6:02. Why don't we get started? I'd like to introduce Nancy Kwan with our Women in Medicine committee, and she will be our host and moderator for today. Go ahead there, Nancy. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to the University of Rochester School of Medicine and Dentistry's Women in Medicine Advocate for Yourself with Ease and Confidence to our virtual event. Before we get started, just a few reminders. This session is being recorded and will be shared. We will be addressing many of the pre-submitted audience questions from registration later on in the discussion. During the Q&A period, you may also raise your hand to be called on or submit your question or comment through the chat. At this time, please set your Zoom view to gallery view and remember to mute yourselves. Let's get started. My name is Dr. Nancy Kwan. I'm the Vice Chair of the Department of Emergency Medicine at Long Island Jewish Medical Center, which is part of Northwell Health, and a Professor of Emergency Medicine at the Zucker School of Medicine at Hofstra Northwell. This is a self-advocacy virtual series sponsored by the School of Medicine and Dentistry's Women in Medicine Alumni Committee. The series is designed to help educate, engage, and empower fellow alumni and students through their career in medicine, with each session exploring a topic centered around the theme of self-advocacy for women in medicine. The session will explore advocating for yourself with ease and confidence. Before I introduce our key speaker, Erin Ducey, I wanted to share some of my findings related to this topic. And the topic is on how researching the biases are important for transparency and to understand the challenges women and other underrepresented groups face to advocate for themselves. So the findings I'm going to talk about are of a study with regard to women and awards for emergency medicine residencies and how women are not chosen for these awards. So just a brief background on how this study, which is in progress, started. I went to go hear a talk for our Society of Academic Emergency Medicine about awards and the disparity of awards in many different avenues, such as in organizations and in other arenas for men compared to women. And it made me go back to our own wall of residency awards. So every year, I think a lot of different programs give awards at graduation, as we do. And when I went back, a number of the years were missing. So I went to our residency coordinator and asked her to pull up the data. And what I found was not surprising, but more shocking than I thought. So out of the 17 years of our program, for Faculty Teacher of the Year Award, which the residents vote on over the years, only one woman won over 17 years. And for Resident Teacher of the Year Award voted on by the faculty, only one woman also won. There were some more awards that were similar, but those were the most extreme. So it made us go and say, why don't we study this? And this was supported actually by our chair as well as our residency director, both who are male, and to share those results broadly with other people, because it highlights implicit biases. And unless we bring those to awareness, it's more difficult to change things. So, I think these topics and making things come to awareness is really important. And, that helps us to advocate for ourselves. And now it is my pleasure to introduce tonight's speaker, Dr. Erin Ducey. Erin Ducey is a professor of obstetrics and gynecology and urology at the University of Rochester Medical Center. She first came to Rochester in 1999 for her OBGYN residency, and since then has served in many roles in the university, including division chief, residency and fellowship director, and vice chair for academic affairs. She is currently working in the Department of Equity and Inclusion, focusing on gender equity issues. And now I will turn the program over to Dr. Erin Ducey.
Thanks, Nancy. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm feeling a little nervous now that I see all the faces on the screen and some people that I didn't think were going to come that are here. Thank you. I'm going to take that as a gesture of support. And I'm going to just kind of pretend like I'm not nervous and go ahead and get started. I think this is a really great topic. I'm saying that now. I may not have reacted quite that way when they brought the topic to me. But we'll see. So are you seeing my real slide or are you seeing my secret slides? Real slide. Thank you, Dr. Lynch. So this title is my fault. This talk was brought to me as self-promotion. And I immediately got the icks and I felt very uncomfortable and started thinking about how horrible it is to be a self-promoter and how those people annoy me and how uncomfortable it is. And we came up with some other words and we wordsmithed it and came up with advocate. And honestly, it was earlier today when I was looking at it one more time that I realized that that was a mistake. Advocacy is one thing, but self-promotion really is quite important and probably not as icky as my first reaction was. So I really want to spend time talking about that and talking about some practical aspects of why we should do it, how we should do it, and how we should create the culture moving forward as that this is the normal way to behave, is to talk well about ourselves and to tell people what we're good at so that we can do more of what we enjoy doing. So my goals for today are a little bit of rehab for the reputation of self-promotion. Just some options to think about developing some new skills or augmenting the skills that we already have. And I think it's great to share this in an experienced group of people who can share the things that they have thought of, dealt with, experienced for the multi-level learners that we have in this group today. It is not a goal today for me to fix you or to teach you how to be like someone else or do it the way someone else does it. One of my big pet peeves is going to leadership trainings or women in leadership trainings and basically being told how to do it the way men have been doing it for 100 years, because obviously that is the best way to do it. So I hope that we're going to find kind of our own path about how each of us likes to do this in a way that's going to be comfortable and successful for each of us. So one myth: hard work and good work will be noticed and rewarded. Maybe. This is a big maybe. Some people have really attentive leaders and supervisors. Some people have less so. Leaders and supervisors are very busy. There's a lot of people running around who are being good and doing hard work. So it might get noticed, but you might get missed too. And we don't want that to happen. And you don't need that to happen. The other thing I often read about is it's about imposter syndrome. Maybe. We don't all have imposter syndrome, and we don't all have imposter syndrome all the time. It is probably much more likely, especially as you get a little bit older and more seasoned, that you still have imposter syndrome maybe for some new things that you're doing or things that you're trying you're not as comfortable with. But a lot of us do feel pretty comfortable with our skills, our abilities, our knowledge, where we are, and yet still feel uncomfortable with the idea of promoting ourselves. So I don't think these two are inextricably tied together. So I don't want to make this into you need to just believe in yourself kind of a talk. That's not it. This does have a couple of things that I think do relate to what I want to talk about today, though. So some of the signs of imposter syndrome are things that kind of go along with people who tend to dismiss praise or fail to self-promote. So feeling like they haven't earned it, or it was just luck, or, wow, you did a great job. And you say, oh, no big deal. It was a team effort, when really you did an amazing job and you should be taking full credit for that. So I want to go over some of our vocabulary. So advocacy, which was the title that we ended up coming up with, it's totally my fault, not Nancy's fault, not Colleen's fault, totally my fault. Public support for or recommendation of a particular cause or policy. We do this all the time, right? We do this for our patients. We do this for society. We do this in our communities. We do it at our local schools. We do it everywhere all the time on many different scales. I've got to get rid of that admit. There we go. So we do this a lot, and this is really about our voice in a larger context. We're doing this today on gender issues. This is a much larger context. It's a multi-institutional, lots of different people. And this is something we feel very comfortable with. And I think we largely feel very comfortable with this because it's for others, right? It is for the good of society. It's for for the group. And we are all people who very much want to benefit the group. So let's change it just a little bit and make it self-advocacy. So still feels kind of safe because it's got the advocacy word in there. So that's a good word. Self is just an add-on. It's not major. It's just a slightly different change. And this is where we represent our own views or interests. We do this all the time as well. Whenever you vote on an issue in the faculty senate, you're expressing your personal viewpoint on something. When you answer your annual engagement survey questions to let them know how much you like working here. When you're working on policy development, your thoughts and your feelings about what is going into that document are expressed, and you're doing self-advocacy for what you believe. And again, this is our voice in a larger context. So self-advocacy, also safe because it's sharing your expertise, it's sharing what you feel, it's sharing what you know towards something that's for the bigger group, not just for you, but for everyone. Now, we get to self-promotion. Little bit different. Icky, that was my first word that came up, was icky. It's bragging, right? It's bragging, it's attention seeking, it's egotistical, it's inconsiderate. We all know that person. And they do it a lot, and it's really annoying. And this is using voice in a personal context. Let's be honest. Using voice in a personal context is not wrong. How you do it, how often you do it, when you do it, and with whom you do it is probably the bigger issue here. So we're going to start our rehab now. So we're going to get past our shame, and we're going to head right into what I did when I thought of this was a Google search. And this was the first entry on the Google page when you click in self-promotion definition. And I just want to point out that it says she is guilty of criminally bad taste and shameless self-promotion. This is their example. And I found this very hurtful. It felt very attacky. I felt like they saw me. And guilty, it sounds like we're going to prison. I thought this was horrible. Even the definition itself says, especially in a forceful way. And that's just not true. This is a biased definition of someone who has an agenda or someone who felt icky when they saw the word self-promotion. There's a better way to talk about this. So I liked this one better. This is from Merriam-Webster, which is, always a reasonable dictionary to use. The act or practice of promoting one's own interests, profile, or skills. And this involves presenting and networking yourself to the public in order to achieve a professional goal. And I love that because it's not just walking around saying, whoop, whoop, I'm awesome. It is walking around and saying, you know what, this is what I know, this is what I can do, this is what I've done, this is what I'm going to do, and there's a reason for it. So the self-promotion has a goal. It's not just willy-nilly bragging. And I think what's interesting is when you think about self-promotion, you think about saying things about yourself, like I'm really smart, or I'm really pretty, or I'm really rich, or whatever the case may be. When really, it's really kind of intertwined with, this is who I am, this is what I know, this is what I can do, and these are the things that ultimately I'm going to need to ask for. So I need you to know that I can do all these things and I am all these things, so that when I ask you for things, you're primed to say yes to me. So for the purposes of this talk, self-promotion is going to encompass both the act of self-promoting in preparation and the ask when you're ready to take that step. So self-promotion, you're doing this all the time. We just don't think about it that way. When you applied to school or residency or a postdoc program, you were self-promoting. You were convincing them that you were the one that they should hire into that position. When you do your annual self-evaluation for your faculty evaluation, same thing. You're putting stuff in there that says, yes, keep me, I'm wonderful. You applied for that NIH grant. Has anybody ever written an NIH profile? You really have to be good to yourself and write some really great stuff because you are asking for millions of dollars. Attending a networking event is self-promotion. Even if you're just there to say hi to your friends, you're putting your face out there. People remember you were there. I am presenting at the Women in Medicine session. This is a little bit of self-promotion to a degree. I do enjoy doing this and I like seeing all my friends, but there's also some benefit to me sharing my knowledge and experience. And this is using my voice in a personal context, which is okay to do. And we do it all the time without thinking about it. URMC does it as well, don't they? So everybody knows about US News World Report, the best hospitals ranking, and everybody wants to be on the list. And this is something URMC does. They campaign for ranking. and they advertise their positive results. This is self-promotion. Even an institution is a self-promoting tool. Corporations are people. We know that from the Supreme Court. Self-promotion also has other value to it. So you can promote your value, but the advocacy, the self-advocacy, saying you should put us in this ranking, these are the reasons why we are great. And then the advocacy, you know that when you self-promote under these circumstances, you advertise, you share with the community what you know how to do and what you can do for them. You have more clientele coming in, you can hire more people from the community and create jobs. It keeps a whole machine running. So there is something to the other side of the self-promotion that has underlying value that's not quite as icky. We participate in this. We vote and we share the positive results. Don't you call your mom or your dad when you get #1 on the U.S. News and World Report ranking? I think you do. And again, self-promotion, it is in our best interest for URMC to be high on this list because it's good for our career and our value as faculty to the world. We advocate with our clients. We advocate for our productivity, our resources, opportunities that we can have. And we do that for our community as well. So this is all very much intertwined. I want all of these things to kind of define themselves in your mind together. So self-promotion, advocacy, and self-advocacy, not one of these three things goes without the others, and none of them is bad. It's how you do it. And they're really important for our growth, our progress, the equity for our community, and for finding joy in our work. So we need to do this. So we're going to go through the who, what, when, why, where, and how. So who? You need to do it. We already discussed, you guys are already self-promoting. You're doing it all the time, but you're doing it in ways that you are very comfortable with, which is fine. But the only person who is an expert on you is you. You know all the things that you're doing. You know what you've done. You know what you probably can do if you stretched yourself. You know where you want to go and what you value. And these are all the things that help you decide what to promote about yourself. When we do comfortable self-promotion, it's easy. We're doing it constantly. We're doing it in little bits and we don't feel icky about it. It's important to stretch that a little bit. I can't do this, but I can stretch my self-promotion a little bit. It is a tool to help you find the next step. So you promote what's true about what you've done and what you can do. And you also need to say what you can do or will do, which you haven't done yet. You haven't proven it, but you know you can. You know you've built up this layer of skills that will get you there. And being able to reach out to that person that you're trying to promote yourself to and say, I can do this more. I can do more of this, I can do a new thing in that, will help you kind of stretch out of that comfortable self-promotion into the promotion that's going to move you forward instead of just keeping people happy with where you're at. So you also have an audience, and this is important to consider, just like you were on the stage. Who are you performing to? Sometimes it's yourself, and just making sure that you feel good about what you're doing and what you're sharing. We do this with our patients and our clients all the time. I do this, I'm a surgeon. Almost every day I convince someone to let me cut them and do something that will make their lives better. And I tell them that I can do this. And this is how well I can do it. And this is what I think you're going to get out of it. And so this is something that happens all the time, but I didn't really think about it as self-promotion, although it most certainly is a milder, comfortable form for me. We do this with our learners and our trainees. You know, when you're on the unit with them, listen to me. I've seen this before. I know what it is. Even though it's not textbook, trust me, I'm going to tell you what this is, and we're going to learn this together. And taking them along with you with their belief that you are worthy of listening to based on your self-promotion. Colleagues, supervisors, and the university, all people that we do this to. One thing that's important to know is when you're talking to an audience, what do they want and what do they value? Because what you want and what you value may not match. So you need to know if you're congruent or if there's a mismatch. If there's a mismatch, you're going to need to strategize a little bit, and you're going to need to think about, how do I solve this mismatch? How do I find a way around it that says it's not really a mismatch, it's maybe just a longer path to get to what you want through what I want first? That there's a way that you're going to benefit from this, even though you might not be seeing it right away. When and where? The easy ones are when someone asks you to apply for something. You fill out an application, you do an interview. We all know how to do that. We've done it 1 million times. Or if someone directly asks and said, hey, I'm looking for someone to head up this committee. Those are easy things to kind of promote yourself and say, hey, I'll do it. I can do it. I've done that before. I know that committee. I know how to do it. This is a little bit simple. It gets a little bit harder when you're talking about something you might not normally self-promote. So you did something great. You went to a national meeting and you presented an abstract on your research and you won the prize for the best research project. It's a little bit hard to run into the hospital on day one and shout with your megaphone, hey, I got the prize at the research meeting. I'm amazing. We don't do that as easily as we just do what people ask us to do. If you want something, let's say you want some new equipment for your clinic, that can be harder and you need to be able to self-promote and ask in order to get that. If you want a leadership role, you need to be able to self-promote yourself to the point where you are recognized as ready and able to take on that type of a role. What you need is data, as much as you can get. This is why you need friends. This is why you need colleagues. This is why you need mentors. This is why you need people who are willing to share information. And it can be as simple as, you don't want that job. Trust me, I've done it. Or it could be, I don't think that's the right path for you from your mentor. That's not going to get you to stage B, which you're looking for. I think you should consider this instead. So you need data to kind of help you understand what it is that you're promoting and what it is that you're asking for. Situational awareness, know when and how to ask. Trust your instincts and a little bit of emotional intelligence. You don't want to just be blurting this out all over the place anytime you feel like it. There are situations where you might feel comfortable doing a little self-promotion. There might be times it's not the right time. You got to be able to read a room. Let's talk about a couple of examples. So this is an overarching example. You need to have an eye on your career, right? You come in from your school or your training, you join as faculty, and you have to start thinking about things like, what promotion tracks am I going to do? Am I going to do research? Am I going to do scholarship? Am I going to do clinical? Am I going to do teaching? There's a lot of options that really define the next years of your life. So advocating for what you're interested in, looking for roles, questioning people, and talking about it rather than letting someone put you in a track that you didn't realize they thought that's where you belonged and you don't feel like that's right. You didn't self-promote. You didn't get it out there, the information you wanted out there about what you're interested in and what you think you can do. When you're junior faculty, are you ready for early promotion? A lot of people are, but a lot of, and I'm going to even go on a limb and say women, don't go and say, hey, I'm ready now. And they're like, oh no, you've got 3 more years before you have to re-up. Don't worry about it. Well, if you're ready and you've met the criteria, why wouldn't you promote early? So promoting yourself and letting people know that you're ready and that these things, it's time for you to move towards these things is really, really important. This continues throughout all of the years. It doesn't really stop. Another example is an ask. You need more research support. So you need to know some things. So some of the things you need to know, was your data set, do you have your data set already? You're ready to go. When are your grant submissions due? When are you going to start sharing with your chair and your research team and your research supervisor when, the data that you got last year and the data set you still have left, and that you can probably get 5 studies out of it, 5 presentations, 5 papers minimum, and you've got 3 learners on that. Everybody loves to add learners to their research. It's good for the university. And you think you can get this into a high impact journal, at least 3 of them, and you can have at least 2 national or international presentations. What can I do for you that's going to help me get the thing I need? And then what are your research submission deadlines? I need the stats person. Can I get access to a stats person? Well, if you get me access to a stats person, I can probably get you 5 publications for your annual department report. So knowing what the chair needs, which is data for his annual department report, and information for leadership that will make them look good, is something that can help you drive along the things that you're looking for. The caveats in there are the things that you hear from your friends. The annual budget is coming up at the same time as your research submission deadlines. They're asking for a 10% cut across the board this year. So getting a new research coordinator might not work, but maybe you could buy some extra time from CTSI's stats team if the chair is willing to cough that up instead of a full salary for a research person. So being able to be strategic, knowing what the audience is facing outside of what you're asking for and what their constraints are and what their anxieties and worries are and how that might impact how they respond to you asking for something is going to be really helpful. And our last when and where is just kind of a typical day. When do you say stuff? There's a lot of opportunities. You don't just shout it out walking down the hall, or you shouldn't probably. So where do you bring this kind of stuff up? Where do you do your self-promotions? I got the research award, I published, I just hired someone, this type of stuff. Well, it depends. So, a grand rounds might be the perfect time, at the end of the meeting to say, that was a great presentation on X. We just published on X at the X meeting and it was received really well. And I think it complemented your data by showing X, Y, and Z. So kind of tying it into what you're seeing as an opportunity, you got to be ready to pounce when you feel like it's the right time. Faculty meeting, when it's just the faculty there, you might talk about successful recruitment. Hey, I just stole someone from Mayo Clinic. And they're going to be starting here in June, and they're going to come here and they're going to do 18 hysterectomies a day, and it's going to be amazing for the learners. So that would fit in that context. If you go to a department leadership reading, this might be where you want to bring up the fact that you just did a clinical collaboration with the emergency department on learning for the trainees and a new clinical protocol that's going to save lives, and that you co-led it with one of them. And this is going to help the chair have information for their annual report, talk about interspecialty collaboration, and it's going to make you look like a boss leader. In your annual evaluation, everything goes in here. Don't leave it out because you think it's your job. I'm going to put that in quotes again. Don't leave it out because you think it's your job. I read a lot of CVs because I do promotions for my department. We write a lot of letters of recommendation. We review a lot of CVs. We talk about whether people are ready. And there's a lot of times that people leave stuff off or don't highlight it because it's just part of their job. And that includes things like presentations at meetings, research publications, editorial roles. It's just at teaching, they do teaching 18 times a year. Well, that's part of my job. Well, 18 times isn't. Maybe 3 times is. That's the standard for faculty. You have to put everything in and keep track of what you're doing because what you do is good. You don't want to devalue your own things and not give people an opportunity to really see the value that you're bringing to your role. How do we do this? I can't tell you exactly how to do it. Everybody kind of needs to figure out what suits them. And people have different styles, and some people are quieter and some people are louder. Some people are at a stage where they're more confident and they do just blurt things out more often. And some people that are a little bit more hesitant and still figuring out how they're going to work this. And I don't think there's a wrong way to do it. The only possible wrong way to do it is to not do it. You need to find a way to practice and figure out where you're comfortable and what your comfortable stretch is. So be sensitive to timing and setting when and where. There is a right time and a place. Gather your intelligence like we talked about. Make sure that you're not stepping into something that is a very fraught situation that you didn't realize, and it's really not the right time to bring up an ask or self-promotion. Don't step on other people's toes or in the moment. So if you're at that grand rounds and someone has been giving a lecture on their research and a junior faculty jumps on and says, hey, I just got a departmental grant for $5,000 to study this angle of what you're talking about, and we're so excited, I'd love your opinion on it. This is not the time to jump in and say, hey, I just got a $5 million NIH grant on that too. So, that would be the time to be nimble and say, you know what, I'm going to bring that up at the chair's meeting instead of bringing it up now. Let that junior faculty shine so that your self-promotion doesn't become you being kind of a jerk. Don't wait for your annual review. It's too late. If you wait till that once a year, 15 minutes you get with the chair or your division chief, you're not going to be able to get it all in. It's going to sound jumbled. It's going to sound crazy. You need to, throughout the year, be giving little updates on what it is that you've done, that you're working on, that you're achieving, that you're interested in, who you are, what's going on. And don't wait for someone else to take the credit. So if you wait too long, someone else is going to jump in and say, hey, I did this thing. It'll be someone on your team. It'll be a co-leader. It'll be someone. Not everybody will do that, but there will be enough people that will. I'm giving you permission now that if this happens at a meeting that you're at and someone says, I did this thing that you did with them, you are allowed to then jump on and say, yeah, that thing we did was great. My role was this, and I really enjoyed doing this part of it. Thanks so much for bringing that up, so-and-so. Advocate for yourself. Don't let people get away with that. Share when asked, please. This idea of being very coy and, oh, thanks, but, no big deal, is not as cute as you think it is, or as I thought it was when I was younger. If you did something, you did it. Don't pretend that you didn't. It's okay to be humble and say, I really enjoyed it. I felt a lot of growth from that. And I think we achieved a really great outcome with this, that, and the other, but there really was a great team effort. If you want to humbleize it a little bit and share the glory, but don't try and make it go away. Acknowledge it. If you fail to self-promote when someone asks you to, people get suspicious. They start to wonder, well, maybe they didn't really do very much. Maybe did someone else do it? Maybe they don't really know what they're doing. Maybe this was luck. I don't know if they could do it again if I wanted them to. People get suspicious if they directly ask you. So please go ahead and say it. And don't minimize or dismiss something nice that somebody says about you. It's awkward sometimes. It feels embarrassing sometimes because attention can be hard. However, they said it because they mean it, presumably, and they are happy for you and maybe happy for themselves, maybe happy for the department. And if you don't acknowledge it and say, yes, thank you to it, then you're saying that they're wrong. And so you are criticizing them in public for praising you. They might never do it again. So they might take that message and say, oh, okay, I won't try that one again. Or they might think, wow, they're not very nice, or they're very arrogant. They don't even want my praise. And that might be the end of that. You don't want to miss out on that opportunity with that colleague of being a promoter of you, which is great. So just say thank you and add something. It's always nice to say, thanks, Todd. I really enjoyed doing that leadership project. I feel like we were really able to set up a new protocol for how we hire managers in our department. It feels very holistic, and I feel like we're going to have an increased diversity amongst our managers, which is going to give us a better idea on our clinical population. I really appreciate you saying that because I felt really good about it. That validates them. It shows that you acknowledge you did an amazing thing. And it just makes everybody feel better about the situation. And guess what? Everybody's going to do it again in the future, which is what we want. Share when others are sharing. If other people are doing it, you can do it too. This is the perfect time. So if everybody's sitting in a group and they're all saying, hey, I got, this research published, and somebody, yeah, me too, I'm going to the same meeting and I'm going to present. It'll be exciting to be there together. And you can say, yeah, me too, I'm coming too. Don't step on others' toes like we talked about, but if there's an opening, take it. This is the perfect time. The group has said this is a good time and we accept self-promotion right now. So this is the time to do it. Congratulate your colleagues, the other people who are saying things, and they'll do the same to you and you will feel good with your endorphin. Match what's going on though, the language, the content, and the level. Don't change the topic. So if somebody's talking about their research grant they got and other people are chiming in about the same thing, don't change it to the heart transplant you just did. Keep it in the area of where everybody else is talking. Otherwise, you sound like you're stealing the moment. If they're promoting their team, promote your team. Keep it in the same kind of genre. And don't trump the junior faculty again with your bigger accomplishment, because it's just a matter of time before they're going to be there and they want to feel good now too. Make it into something else so it's more comfortable. Call it mentorship. It is. Share your accomplishments to help other people learn how to do things, not make the same mistakes you've made. You are a role model. No matter what level you're at, you're a role model for somebody at this institution. Someone is looking to you to see how to behave, how to do things, how to speak to people, and you can inspire them in doing that. We can also normalize self-promotion as a way that we speak and share our accomplishments with each other. And you can model good ways of doing it so that people know it doesn't have to be that weird, icky way that we used to see all the time. It can be this way and everyone can enjoy it and benefit from it. So this is almost, I think, an obligation. And I'm going to challenge the older people in the group, more senior, more mature, more experienced, whatever word you want to use. This should be in the job description. This should be something that we model and teach our junior faculty to do so that they can do it properly and then let the next group of people do it. This is how we move forward. So I gave a talk about advocacy at Women in Medicine. I was very pleased by the turnout and the discussion that we had. That's my self-promotion. So that's what I just said to my chair. And then the other people in the room would hear me say, well, one thing I noticed when I was presenting was, and I would say something, and then next time I might try this instead. So I might try video clips instead of cartoon art, because I think that the audience didn't react very well to the ones that I chose. So, something that they would learn, and then their next presentation, they might think, oh, geez, Erin used clip art. I'm going to try videos because she said she might try that next time. And I might they might not make the same mistake I made. Put it in context. So your success makes your audience look good. It makes your audience feel good. And sometimes the feeling good is even more important than the looking good. Highlight successes aligned with goals. Know some things. This is all on the internet. So my department's annual report is on the internet. I know in there because my chairman writes what they are interested in this year and what they're interested in for the next 5 years. I have a list of what they're interested in. I have a list of what URMC is interested in between now and 2024, which is this year, but I'm sure they'll put a new one up soon. And then I have one for 2030 for the University of Rochester, what they're interested in. I can look at this and find places where what I'm interested in is aligned, supports, moves us towards a goal that will help me promote myself, my activities, and what I want to do next. So being strategic about why what you want to do is important to more than just you is really, really helpful. It helps the leaders. It helps you tell the leaders what it is that they really want. So make it a story. Some people are natural born storytellers. Stories sell. People love a story more than they love a fact, to be honest. It gives automatic context to what you're talking about, and it makes it casual. It makes like you're just talking. So Heidi went to their chair and said, I know one of the US News and World Report's criteria is research on movement disorders. So there's their context right there. Then they told a story. Said last summer I did a research summit with geriatrics, and we built a joint research team for a new diagnosis of Parkinson's patients. And we had several retreats that I led. We jump-started protocol development, self-promoted her leadership, told a story, and then they did some self-promotion and said, and we just got the NIH grant to fund it. So this is purely self-promotion, but it's a story. It promoted other people, and it's telling the chair things that are really important for the chair, like we have interdepartment collaboration, we have learners, we have research going on, and we're publishing, and I can put that in my report and look great. You need a promoter. It might take a little while, but you're going to get them, and some of them are going to happen without you having to do anything. This is secondhand bragging or positive gossip. This is like what your mom used to do for you, but she can't do for you because she does not work here. So the prime example is letters of recommendation. So anyone who writes you a letter of recommendation is promoting you. They are there to say all the great things about you and what you have to offer and why you should be promoted. You can create a partnership with colleagues to make this a thing that you do and lead by example. So when someone is not there and you're in a meeting and an opportunity comes up that would be good for them, promoting them and saying, you know what, I know that Alice is really good at doing quality assurance evaluations. And she took an extra course on that, and she did a leadership course on quality assessment. And I think that you should consider her for that role. That is promoting her, advocating for her knowledge and her experience, and it's saying that this would be a good person to rely on for this. We can do this for our female colleagues. We can do this for our colleagues of color. We can do this for anyone who's, even if they're in the room, you could still do it. Anyone who you think might not do it for themselves, they need help as well. So promoting upward to can be a useful tool. Often your chair, your division directors, people that are a little bit farther along in the hierarchy don't always hear a lot of good stuff about what they've done. Mentioning a specific accomplishment that they've done, like I really like that you were able to get on-site childcare for all of the faculty in our department. Pipe dream, but I could say it out loud anyway. And that really meant a lot to me because that means I get to spend more time with my kids in the morning and then in the evening when I'm picking them up, rather than more travel time and less time together, and then they go to bed and I don't see them for the rest of the night. So letting them know how it impacted you buys a lot of goodwill. It's a little bit of a promotion, meaning you are a thoughtful person, you're a kind person, you're looking around, you know what's going on, you've assessed things logically, you were able to give an impact statement. They start to think of you as a partner, and that is a huge amount of self-promotion. And the last two are strike a balance. So yes, we are all amazing, but not all the time. So you do have to leave room for what I learned, for a mistake I made, and this is what we did to correct it, and everything turned out okay. And tell the story of the thing that you did that wasn't right, and you made an adjustment, and then the research turned out fine, or the clinical correlation turned out fine. It shows that you're a nice person. It shows that you're not just bragging all the time, and it builds credibility because nobody's perfect. But be strategic. You don't have to share every little mistake you make, and you don't have to share ones that don't really impact anything. If you fell in the hallway and nobody saw it, don't tell anyone. No one needs to know. It does not promote you in any way whatsoever. You can celebrate yourself as well. Think about how you do it. There's self-promotion at work, but go home and tell your friends or your loved one, I'm amazing, and go and just straight up brag, because people who love you will let you just straight up brag and say, oh my God, I got the biggest NIH grant of the year. I can't believe it. You are looking at the person who got the biggest NIH grant of the year, and just let it loose and get it out, because you do deserve that as well. But you wouldn't really want to do that at work because it's a little bit much. Maybe just in the lab with the doors closed where nobody else can hear it except the research team. But you want to be careful. And you should share good news with your team. We almost always share the bad news, but sometimes we forget to share the good news. If you withhold good news from a team, it harms the relationship, because they think, well, maybe I wasn't important enough to be told. Maybe I didn't contribute, so she didn't think that I needed to know about it. There are a lot of imaginary things that can go along with you not telling people something good that happened. So it is important to share that with everyone. Language does matter. So there are some good ways to share promotion techniques. What I have done, a clear, concise listing of something that's relevant to what you're about to ask for, that tells something that you've done. What I will do for you, the implied is for you, because you're asking someone. What I will do, what they're going to get out of it, what I can do for you. I can get it so that all of your faculty rate a 9 out of 10 out of happiness at work. I mean, good luck, but you could probably say that. You're saying what you say you will do for them, or what I would suggest. Let's say that somebody comes in and says, oh my God, this person's been in this role for 5 years. It's a disaster. Everything's falling apart. You don't want to jump on the bandwagon and say, yeah, they're a disaster. They're horrible. You should never give them that role. They're terrible. You can instead be the savior and say, I would suggest we consider trying this, and I would like to take that on. And you can self-promote a little bit without pooping all over the person who has already messed it up. Having a proposal, a why or a reason, data whenever possible, outcome measures. How are they going to tell if you did a good job? You want that for yourself. You want to be able to put that in your CV and in your MyPath evaluations. And the chair wants to know, how am I going to know if they did a good job? And what impact is it going to have? We often forget the impact statement, that this is going to help you because fewer people are going to come in your office and complain. Fewer people are going to come in and ask for money. Fewer people are going to do this, that, or the other thing, or everyone is going to do this thing that you want them to do. So impact is really important. Things that aren't as good is what I can do. Like right now, I am capable of doing this thing. Well, okay, but have you ever done it before? Prove that you can. So there's some doubt there. And will you do it? There's a difference between I will do it and I can do it. People want to hear I will do this. It's a small word difference, but it does make a difference. Don't say, what do you want me to do? Sometimes you can go in and say, I need help. What do you want me to do? This thing is exploding. But most of the time, people want to hear that somebody else has an idea, and that they don't have to come up with all of the ideas all the time. Make a suggestion. Guess what? It could be a suggestion that's not perfect, and maybe they will help you modify it. Or maybe they'll say, oh, I see a spark in there, but let's twist it and do this instead. Or they might love your suggestion, but they're going to love that you made a suggestion. And again, don't compare or name. You don't need to be better than someone else to be amazing as you are. So you don't have to put other people down. Again, you must be thoughtful and prudent. Self-promotion is only one tool. This is just one skill that we're talking about in all the things that you do as a faculty. We talked about stretch. So comfortable, self-promotion, moving to conscious. What I think I can do, what I think I will do, but you don't want to go too far. Make sure you have a good idea of who you are and what you're able to do before you do that reach self-promotion. because you don't want to be out on a limb and find out you overreached and you're going to have to eat some crow over it. Be realistic when you're self-promoting and asking. As faculty, it boils down to what we're owed is equitable resources and opportunity. You're not owed an outcome. You're not owed a promotion. You're not owed a leadership role. You're not owed things. We want these things. We want to do these things. So we need to find ways to get ourselves ready. It's our responsibility to make ourselves ready to gain the experience, to do what we can, and then find ways to promote so that we can be given the opportunities. You need to have a good idea of what you can actually do. What are your actual skills? Do I have gaps? If I have gaps, what can I do to fill those gaps so that that role that I want to be the chair. Well, all I've been doing so far is just clinic and then medical school clerkship, the third year clerkship. So that's a leadership role, but it's a smaller leadership role. What would be the next thing I can do to fill that gap that might get me closer to a more administrative type role? Maybe I want to be a research director in my division and then try and be a division director, and then that would get me to chair. You need to think about a logical progression for what you really want and choose roles that make sense. And do your goals match with what is valued? If you really, really, really think something is important, and that's all you really, really want to do, but nobody else wants to do that or thinks it's important, you're not going to get very far. You need to find a way to find some alignment between the people that you're asking and yourself to make sure that what you want is going to feed what they need or are looking for. That being said, when you are promoting yourself, asking for things does not mean that you have to lay down like a doormat either. You can turn things down if it's not what you thought you wanted. You have a right to know what, if you take on a role, what would be the time you get? Do I get FTE for that? Do I get extra clinic time off for that? Do I get RVU time for that? How is that time going to be covered if I'm not doing clinic and I'm doing this other thing for you? And how much of that time is it? Are you going to give me 10% for a role that's really going to take 50% of my time? And so you need to look at it and know what the value is so that you can ask for appropriate time so that you can be successful. So just because you're asking for things doesn't mean that you need to take exactly what you've been offered. Negotiate as well. You have value. I think it's important always at these things to remind ourselves what we need and what we need to start with. Everybody needs mentors. The mentor is the person that listens to you and talks to you. You're in a room together. It's one-on-one. You chat. You talk about things. You talk about the things that you did, the things that you tried, the people you know. And it's about your professional advancement and development. They don't have to advocate for you. All they have to do is talk to you and help you. Coaching is where someone tells you what to do, and presumably you pay them to do that in a lot of cases. A lot of people are using professional coaches nowadays, and they're a really good tool. This is also a one-on-one relationship that does not require them to advocate for you. They're there to kind of help you improve your performance, either in specific areas or in general areas. Sponsorship is the kind of thing we're talking about today. A sponsor talks about you. This is the relationship that's public. The other ones are private. This is the one where someone who's in a higher position than you goes out and says, you know what? I believe in this kid. I think this kid can do it. I think we ought to give this kid a chance. And they go out and they tell people why and what you can do, what you will do, and that you're the up and comer. And they recommend, they're putting their name on the line. They recommend that you be given a shot. Most of us have some degree of that. You know, it's different at different levels. And as you get a little bit higher up the hierarchy, you're more of a sponsor, and it's more of a role that you need to do. When you're starting out, though, you can look around and, you know, sponsoring, there's little sponsors. So when I'm in the operating room, I can see my fellow, who is just an instructor, not even an assistant professor yet, but she is sponsoring medical students and coming and saying, you know what, I believe in this kid. This kid can tie sutures. I think you should let them tie knots, and we should give them some feedback so they can get better. They're going to be amazing. And she is sponsoring them publicly because that is what we do for each other. So strategic self-promotion. Choose when and do it well with a goal in mind. We're not just saying stuff to say stuff. All of this is building towards, in 6 months, I'm going to have an ask. In a year, I'm going to want to be promoted. In 3 months, I'm going to be asking for more access to the stats person. So you need to have a reason why you're doing this. You need to do it consistently. It doesn't have to be every day, but every so often you need to get your plug in there for yourself so that by the time you're ready to ask for something, they remember who you are. There's a buzz about all the stuff you've been doing and how competent you are and how you're ready for this. And they're like, oh yeah, of course you can do that. Arm yourself with data wherever you can, talking to colleagues, talking to people in other departments. You'd be surprised what you find out outside of your home department. All information is good information to have. Doesn't mean you have to use it, but file it away in the little brain, and you never know when that's going to come in handy. You can use other things that are available to you too. Not enough people use the institutional social media. We have a URMC social media. If you publish, they will put that on Instagram for you and it'll look good and you don't have to do a thing except tell them about it. You can use faculty at or URMC this week, which goes out to everyone. So a little bit of self-promotion all over the place. Department newsletters, announcements, and in the annual report. If you did something that you think is worth mentioning, share it with your division chief, share it with your chair and say, I'd love to do a half of a page article on this thing that we did in the annual report. I think it serves the department because it shows this. So promote yourself. Promote others, though. I think this is really, really important. The power that we gain as we move along and we do these roles really needs to be used to change the way things are so that it's not so hard. It should be normal to self-promote. We should show how to do it in a way that is pleasant for everyone and that is made comfortable for everyone and that everyone has the same opportunity to participate in the things that are going on in the department. And that's it. I think we have time for questions. I'm going to unshare. Now I can see everybody. I think our first question, Nancy, was about the students, right?
Yes. The first question was a pre-submitted question, and it was, what advice would you give for students?
Don't get overwhelmed. This was a lot. However, the advantage to being a student is that you can ask questions and you can ask whys, and you can easily kind of come in and say, I need to know more about the system. I need to know what's going on. I'd like to understand. And people will take that as a younger person who doesn't know. As you get older, it gets a lot harder to ask because you're supposed to know. You should have figured that out by now. It gets more awkward. Even if we just feel that way ourselves and no one else would feel that way, it feels harder to ask questions. Ask everything. And don't be afraid to ask why. Find out stuff. File it away up here. And then when you start rolling along, then that information will become useful to you. All information is good. Self-promotion, you need to practice because you're going to be applying to a lot of things. You applied to medical school, you're going to apply to internships, you're going to apply to residency, maybe fellowship. It's hard. It's hard for students. It's hard to come into a room and be surrounded by surgeons and physicians and nurse practitioners and PAs and people that have done all this stuff. And for you to come in and say, I sutured today and it didn't bleed. It was really good. That is actually a really good accomplishment. And I think it's okay to share those things. But you just have to find the right time and place and people who will recognize and are still in the know enough to recognize that your first sutures are a really big deal and you should be self-promoting over that. And at least call your mom.
That's really great advice. I think that was the only pre-submitted question. So I'm going to open it up to the audience and we could do it either via chat or if you want to raise your hand, and I'll try to scan the room to see who has a question. So if you want to raise your hand and I'll call on you and you can unmute if you have a question. Let's see, where did my screen go? So I see some great comments about what a great talk, it was a really wonderful talk. Colleen, I might need your help because I see only one page. I don't see any questions yet unless I'm missing.
We don't have to have questions.
I'll ask you a question while we're
ask.
And I think, and I have so many, but I don't want to take over all the questions. So with regards to self-promotion and advocacy, I think, one of the things that people often talk about is networking. So what would your advice be on networking? And I think part two to that question is, I think there's a lot of data out there that shows that sometimes it may be harder for women to network because a lot of the networking events might take place in the evening when and we know that women oftentimes are taking, more the people who are taking care of the children or doing household duties, and that's based on data. So what would your advice be on the importance of networking, and how can women achieve it when there might be challenges to doing that?
Well, that's tough because I hate networking. I absolutely hate it. So as an introvert, it is very difficult for me to walk into a large group of people and then try and find someone to talk to, and all the anxieties that come up with that. I think one of the things that I have learned over the years is that you should be yourself. If you're an extrovert and you love going around to different groups of people and starting conversations and asking weird questions and kind of starting things up, great, then you're a networker. If that's less something that you want to do, I don't think it's disastrous for a career. I think walking into a room, spotting your friends and talking to 3 or 4 people, the networking part comes in that other people saw you in the room. I mean, you might not think people know you, but they do. So I've been in a professional society for 15 years now, and it's always surprising to me that I'm not a big networker, so I don't go to all the things and I don't talk to all the people, but somehow people over time figure out who you are because you show up and you stand quietly in the room. And that's enough sometimes, just to be present and to be a support to the other people who are talking, and maybe just pipe up every so often. It doesn't have to be as much of a network. I think the other thing that I find hard about networking, and I would say especially to students, network for a reason. Just going in and talking to people and saying, hello, where are you from? That sort of stuff. That's a cocktail party. If you are trying to network, you need to have something that you're looking for. So if you're a student and you're looking for a research project so that you can apply to residency in a certain specialty, then going, to that department's evening event, and then talking to a couple of people that you've picked out in advance that are doing research in an area you're interested in, and introducing yourself, that's networking. So that is a little bit more purposeful and goal-oriented, a little bit easier to do rather than this random mingling around the room, which we call networking. I'm banning it.
Thank you. I see another question from Dr. Brunner. Is there a special way to self-promote toward leadership in medicine?
Well, that's where all my experience is. So everything that I've said here, I find very pertinent. Now, there's not a lot of research data about this that you can put your finger on. So a lot of this is experiential and what people see. A lot of the data that I did find is very focused on imposter syndrome, or it's hard for women because we have feminine traits and it's not professional. And I am not entertaining that. So I did not bring that to this group. I think it's nonsense. I think people are different and people are who they are. So to medicine, I think the key over the years has been you need to have data if it's available. You need to propose outcome measures and how you're going to meet them, and you need to have an impact. Why is this important to spend my time on? We have limited resources. Every year it seems like we have less resource, so the impact becomes increasingly important. And even small impacts are important. So even if it only impacts part of a department or a division or a smaller group or just learners, that doesn't mean it's not going to work. It just means that you need to know what that impact is and why your department is going to value it. If you can come up with those things, that's going to make the biggest difference with your leadership for your asks and your promotions.
Thank you so much for that great advice. I see another question from Dr. Schwartz. How do you handle self-promotion when you are recognized nationally but not locally?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, you know what? I think this is going to take some local self-promotion by the person who is nationally known. I think that person is going to have to start to self-promote verbally with their peers and with their supervisors or chair and let them know the things that they're doing at the national level. Otherwise, it's going to wait until you get your CV submitted for your promotion. They're going to be surprised as heck that you're the chair of 3 committees and you've written a bunch of policy papers. So I think you're going to have to do that work yourself. And just start throwing that out there. And the good times would be at grand rounds. This is a good time to comment on things and say, wow, what a great presentation. I really liked your data on this. Did you know that on our national committee at the So-and-so Society, we've made a new policy and this really, your data really supports that. It's both good for the person who's presenting, but then also lets people know, wow, that's a national person. That's really a big deal, because it is a big deal. So I think you're going to have to throw some of those in and start that tide yourself.
Thank you for that answer. From Dr. Flannery, I heard today women make 84, I just lost it, 84 cents to the every dollar men make. Could you comment on salary negotiations and promotions?
Oof. This is hard. And it is hard because we don't talk about money. I think the best you can do is get whatever data you can get. And I think that realistic questions to be able to ask are, what is the standard AAMC percentage for salary for this specialty that this department pays? And then you can get that data and you can find out. And, you know, there's always a little bit of give for how long someone's been there. And if they came from a different place with a couple more committees under their belt, et cetera, et cetera. So there's always wiggle room, but within a range, being able to tell what a good, reasonable number is. So that's the kind of data you can get from outside. A lot of our professional societies do salary surveys. And that was really important for me. The last time I negotiated my salary was having that outside data from the nation and from the regions, because regions are very different as well. And then putting that together with the things that I do. So I think having some data about where you know you should be, and then to be able to argue for the upper end of it, because you're not looking for unfair salary. I mean, we all would love to have all the money, but you want a fair salary within the range that the department has set as a standard, and to argue for the upper end based on years of experience, the teaching that you do, the people that you have mentored, the roles that you hold in the department at the institution on these national committees. These are big deals. And we don't really have a good system for putting value on them. So you have to frame them in the sense of, my service to the university includes me putting the name of UR out there on these national committees as the chair, as the treasurer, as a participant in policy development on a national level, and really be willing to say, I'm special and I've done these extra things. I'm not just here doing my clinical work and nothing else. I've done extra things. I need a little bit more. So you need to be able to toot your horn a bit within the range of the data you need to get your hands on, so that you know where you're starting from. If the chair can't answer you about what percentage their standard kind of starting point is, or what their standard range is based on AAMC data, then it's reasonable to say, what data do you use to ensure equity in the department, and start a conversation that way.
Great answer. Thank you so much. I think we may have time for just one more question. And there's a question in the chat.
Looks like we have Jennifer Corcoran, Nancy, that has her hand raised.
Oh, okay. Do you want to
You want to unmute yourself and go ahead, Jennifer?
Yeah, hi, sorry. I think I kept trying to type my question and it was too long to succinctly put in the chat. I'm a junior member of my own department in neurology. I'm a fellow, and I have gotten a lot of feedback and mentorship from more senior faculty about self-promotion, and that, you know, you should email your division chief and your department chair if you do something. And I think sometimes I really struggle with knowing like what rises to the level that it deserves an email. Like some things are obvious, like you get a grant, you should, you know, email your chair and your chiefs. They know you got funded. I think at my level of manuscript is probably still reasonable, so they know I'm productive. But there's other things where it's like I sort of wonder if I should let them know, but don't want to be annoying, or I'm not really sure. And I probably err on the side of under promotion. So I guess that's one thing that would be helpful, is like, how do you decide like what is worth like actively bringing to your leaderships, that you're not under promoting yourself, but also not, I don't know, annoying them?
I that's a good question. You know, in some ways you could just be very succinct and say, if you would put it on your CV, it's probably worth telling someone about. But you could also try and organize it in a way that fits the role that you and your division chief know you're going on. If you're on an education administration role, focus on those things. If you're on the fellowship education committee for your professional society, say, hey, I just got elected to that. That would be a good one. If you did a couple of a lecture series for another department to hone your teaching skills, sharing it and saying, hey, what I learned was they do this. This might be really interesting to use in our program. I'd like to run it by you. So it's a story then. You're telling them that you did this lecture series and you're including them and their expertise in, you think this is a great idea and you'd love to think about doing it. So, you know, according to your path, things that are really relevant to where you're heading and what you want, and telling a story about how it impacts them or what you learned that would benefit the department is a good way to make it less like a, hey, I did a good thing email, and more of a, hey, we're in this together email. I'm self-promoting, but I'm also looking at this through the lens of, I'm a leader in this department and I want to move this along for you. Does that help?
Yes, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Great answer. Thank you so much. I'm hoping we have time for one more question, Colleen, because there's one other great question in the chat.
Go ahead.
Okay. So can you speak to dealing with the status leveling with nurses and others? I spend a lot of time getting nurses on my side with initiatives, and it feels like fellow women in other roles are not always supportive. I guess, you know, how to deal with that. And I think that's like such a great question. So, Dr. Ducey.
Yeah, okay. This is a tough one. Okay, so this is a tough one. So, you know, we all want this to be, you know, a nice, you know, everyone's for everyone. But it's, you know, humans are human too. And I think that I think it was a little bit more overt when I was way back in the day when I was a resident. And, you know, it was very tricky to be a female physician on the floor with the female nurses and the female APPs, et cetera, et cetera. And I think things have gotten a little bit better, but I still see it. I see what you're saying exactly. I think the only thing that I have thought to do, and this is just my style, this might not be your style, is to pretend like everyone has everyone's best interests at heart, decide to be surprised when someone behaves otherwise, because a surprised response is, oh, I'm really surprised that you took the, you know, thing that we wrote and published it, and I wasn't an author on. I'm really surprised that would happen. How could that happen? And then trying to bring people to the idea of, it doesn't have to be this way. We can all work together. I'm surprised when you don't. And when you don't, I'm going to ask you about it so that we can reboot that and make that different. And then people start to kind of come along with, oh, she is interested in me. I don't have to fight her on this as much as I thought I did. And it kind of, it's a lazy way. It is. It's a lazy way of trying to pretend like this isn't happening, because fighting it head on just turns into fights. Been there, had those discussions, and it just turns into well, they're saying they're the doctor and I'm the nurse, and so I'm just not having that, and it becomes unpleasant and uncomfortable, and then you don't work well together. So I think I tend to try and just assume moving forward that everyone is on the same page, and then when they're not, calling it out and saying, wow, I'm surprised, I thought we were on the same page, and then making them explain, because it's hard to explain. If anyone has a better solution than that, speak up now, please.
I think that's really great advice, and it's a very, you know, I think tough and complicated question. So I think we're out of time, unfortunately, because I feel like we could have gone on forever, and that was such an amazing talk, Dr. Ducey. So at this time, I would like to thank you for joining us. Watch for invitations for future Women in Medicine events. Also, a recording of today's presentation will be forthcoming. And a reminder to please stay connected with the School of Medicine and Dentistry by joining the Meliora Collective the university's online networking and mentoring platform. And the slides will be shared. If you are not already a member, please join the collective as well as the MD Connects and Women in Medicine groups within the collective. We look forward to being together again soon. Thank you so much. And thank you, Dr. Ducey.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.